The first thing you'll notice upon starting up Okami are the simply beautiful visuals. It takes on a cel-shaded approach and is largely reminiscent of the style found in Japanese watercolor paintings. This concept carries right into the gameplay, with it all being based around the use of an item known as the Celestial Brush. From exploration to even puzzle solving and battles, just about everything utilizes this core mechanic. The distinctly Japanese art style and setting is absolutely stunning, and every time you enter a new area, you'll find yourself just wanting to look around. From the hills that tower over the countryside, to the off-beaten paths and deserted beaches, even the dark, evil locales are strangely compelling. Now there's tons of subtle touches that are in themselves impressive and soothing as well. Being able to plant a tree with a dot of ink, the flowers that spring up behind you when you run, or even the simple joy of making animals happy and flowers bloom. Matching this is the animation that is buttery smooth in its execution. Traversing the world feels natural and never becomes a stale affair, with the wealth of hidden areas and activities to take part in. The Tekken series was always a sort of showcase for the PlayStation. Ever since its first iteration on the PlayStation 1, the series has consistently improved with each subsequent release. The second outing on the PlayStation 2 managed to introduce many new elements that in all honesty missed the mark when it comes to gameplay, but when taking into consideration the visuals, Tekken 4 more than excels in that department. As you would expect from any fighting game, there's a generous amount of characters and stages to choose from, and in true Tekken fashion they are all presented in loving detail. Now the biggest addition was the way each stage was now an enclosed space instead of the endless sprawling arenas of old. Because of this they were a lot more dense and provided an impressive range of background details that helped bring each fight to life, from the crowds of onlookers to several destructible elements such as pillars and parked cars that would inflict extra damage. For long-time Tekken fans it was a huge change and contributed to what some may see as Tekken 4's failure, but seeing it all up and running in a solid 60 frames per second added a real sense of realism that at times was missing from the series. Complementing the new take on stages was the level of detail afforded to each character model. On top of this, the subtle effects such as reflections, particles and smoke further pushed the believability of the on-screen action and helped propel Tekken 4 into one of the best looking PS2 games. The Metal Gear Solid series has always been on the cutting edge of visual design. This was no more apparent than with its second installment, that still manages to look visually impressive to this day. The first thing you'll notice are the character models, which are more or less perfect, and this is just the beginning of Metal Gear Solid 2's visual achievement. Whilst there are some aliasing issues, the attention to detail is just staggering, and more than makes up for this shortcoming. Rain falls with disturbing realism that once entering an inside area results in wet footsteps that can give away your position. Various environmental elements such as fire extinguishers and rows of bottles can all be individually shot, that results in their contents spilling out and confusing or disorientating guards chasing you. Even individual lights can be shot out, darkening the area they once bathed. As many will know, the game is largely split into two separate campaigns. The first sees you infiltrating a ship, whilst the second sees you finding your way through a cleanup facility known as Big Shell. This section is literally awash in sunlight that brings the incredible lighting engine to the forefront. Shadows, reflections, smoke and flames all animate fluidly, which grant the experience an unparalleled level of realism. When taken into consideration the age of the hardware, seeing all of this play out is incredible, especially at 60 frames per second, and although it does dip from time to time, especially when the on-screen action starts to heat up, there's no denying that it's still one of the best looking games on the system. The PlayStation 2 was no stranger to quality racing games. In the first part of this series we went over Gran Turismo and several realistic takes on the sport, but one game that has always stood out to me has to be Automodelista. Seeing this game in motion is simply stunning. The cel-shaded aesthetic lends the game a unique look that it can call its own, and although it's prone to some frame rate dips, it's never nothing that entirely ruins the experience. As with most racing games, you can expect to be visiting a wide variety of tracks to race on, from the dense and urban cities of Japan to the more rural countryside that showcases the visual style in all of its splendor. But it doesn't stop there. Thanks to a range of dynamic effects such as weather and time of day, these tracks take on a completely different style that not only affects the way the game looks, but also the way in which it plays. There's a ton of cars to choose from Mitsubishi to Nissan and Mustang. Each of them is surprisingly detailed considering the style that's implemented, and allow the player to completely customize each of them to their liking. On the track, big yellow sparks fly when you hit walls and other cars, flames fly out of tailpipes when the engine backfires, and white clouds of dust, smoke and steam shoot from your tires as you make hard turns. It all comes together to make one of the most visually impressive games on the system. The Kingdom Hearts series has always been a bit of a looker. Ever since the first entry on the PlayStation 2, Square's and Disney's lovable mashup has always impressed. The second mainline entry carries on this tradition and presents one of the best entries in the franchise. It takes on a cartoonish aesthetic that lends the adventure a truly playful nature and helps the visual aspect of the experience shine. Much like the other games, you'll find yourself visiting a wide range of worlds that are all inspired by Disney's backlog, with each and every one of them bursting to life on the screen. And although just looking at it running is impressive enough, actually playing it is even better. The animations are smooth and really come into their own during battle. Each attack and ability are presented in style and add a real weight to each encounter. Various effects light up the on-screen action and bring to life every attack you carry out. As fans of the series will know, Kingdom Hearts is incredibly story heavy, and number 2 does not skirt this aspect of the games. A slew of cutscenes are present and all play out in a truly cinematic fashion, and that's just the cutscenes that utilize the in-game engine. Once you add in the range of FMV sequences as well, what you have is one of the most cinematic adventures available on the PS2. After its first entry on the PlayStation 1, Valkyrie Profile soon became one of my favourites on the system. Its unique blend of platforming and RPG elements helped it stand out amongst the range of impressive RPGs that the PlayStation 1 saw. Naturally, it wasn't long until a sequel made its way to the PlayStation 2 that managed to improve upon nearly every aspect that made up the first outing. From the characters to the environments, the lighting and particle effects, every aspect that makes up the visuals are just incredible throughout. This is mainly true within battle, which is where the experience springs to life. The first thing you notice are the huge variety of enemy designs that each look just as imposing as the last, especially the bosses, which at times see them filling the entire screen. As with most RPGs, you can expect a range of attacks and special abilities, with every effect providing a real weight to each and every action you carry out. From individual body parts that can be knocked off, to the endless stream of combos you can perform once mastering the system, it all looks absolutely sublime in motion and makes the battling system one of the most impressive aspects of the game. Now, the entire adventure is largely inspired by Norse mythology, which sees each location taking many cues from the legends associated with it. You'll see yourself visiting the highest mountain peaks to the dingy depths of the underworld, which all manage to feel unique. Because of this, there's never a dull moment throughout the adventure, which in my eyes goes on to become one of the most aesthetically pleasing games you'll ever find on the system. The PlayStation 2 is a literal goldmine of solid RPGs. From Final Fantasy to more obscure offerings like Rogue Galaxy, players are literally spoiled for choice when it comes to choosing what to play. And one of my go-tos has always been SMT Nocturne. Post-apocalyptic Tokyo has never looked better, a wasteland where only the strong matter and the weak are pushed aside comes off very clear in the grand scheme of things. The visual style takes on a sort of pseudo-cel-shaded aesthetic, with almost all of the environments you travel through in the game being nothing short of breathtaking, with several subtle details that help each of them stand out against the last. Matching this is the sheer diversity in character and enemy design, which are all incredibly well made and presented. As with most games in the series, you'll be adding a lot of them to your team, and with the amount on offer, there is bound to be some that you'll fall in love with. Once in battle, the combat animations take center stage and provide a wealth of effects that bring a real weight to every action you carry out, from simple hand-to-hand attacks to the more impressive abilities that light up the screen in colour. Seeing it in motion is a real sight to behold. Although the game is quite rare these days, if you can manage to grab a copy for yourself, Nocturne is an RPG that will not disappoint. Silent Hill has always been one of my favourite survival horrors. Ever since being introduced to the dark and disturbing world on the PlayStation 1, the series has constantly evolved to sometimes differing results, with the third entry being one of the more positive developments. Entering the nightmare as Heather Mason, the world of Silent Hill had never seen such a significant upgrade. The first aspect of the visuals that many players will notice is the way in which characters react to the environment. The impressive range of subtle emotions that are clearly visible throughout play lend a real sense of dread to the on-screen action. Coupling this with the often chilling and mysterious locations you find yourself occupying results in one of the most atmospheric and gripping takes on the series. Of course, Silent Hill wouldn't be complete without the range of hideous monsters that inhabit the world. These grotesque creations all carry with them an intimidating manner that will keep you right on the edge of your seat. Each character and enemy are impressively animated as well, with almost lifelike qualities that brings about a real sense of realism to their actions, from Heather's subtle sway as she runs to the more unpredictable nature of the enemies. But if there is one aspect that truly shows how much Silent Hill 3 pushed the hardware, it has to be the lighting. As with most horror games, lighting plays a huge role, and it's implemented masterfully with Silent Hill 3. Shadows cascade and react naturally to the environment as lights flicker and mask the danger ahead, which all contributes to the ever-growing dread. Although it never quite reaches the heights of its predecessor, the third Silent Hill is still a solid entry, and one that you should definitely give a go. The PlayStation 2 was home to some of the greatest entries in the long-running RPG series, with the 12th iteration literally pushing the PS2 to its limits. It introduces players to another intoxicating adventure and sees you visiting an impressive range of locales and interacting with a lovable cast of characters that helps cement it as one of the best in the series. Each town, dungeon and open area are painstakingly detailed, with various subtle elements and NPCs with daily routines that featured a variety of flair and visual appeal that you would only expect from the main cast. Of special note were the enemy designs, and when you consider that your opponents are always rendered within the context of the environment, it is rather impressive that they accomplished what they did on the hardware. Once in battle, a huge variety of attacks and spells can be executed by the player, which light up the screen with a range of incredible effects. Now, Final Fantasy wouldn't be complete without the FMV sequences that have become a staple of the series. The 12th entry does not disappoint and produced some of the most impressive to date, and further pushed the series forward when it comes to presentation. There's an absolute wealth of fighting games available on the PlayStation 2, but one that truly stands out, especially from a visual standpoint, has to be Soul Calibur 3. The series has always been well known for its visual prowess, and the third iteration took it to an entirely new level. It manages to maintain a solid 60 FPS, whilst demonstrating every character and stage in a phenomenal amount of detail. Every special move and attack are as flashy as you would expect, whilst paying close attention to each fight reveals intricate facial animations and subtle graphical touches that dynamically react to the action on screen, such as clothing swaying in the wind and particle effects that naturally reflect off each of the characters, which all come together to help bring an extra layer of depth to the visual style. One area that needs a special note are the stages that you find yourself occupying. The sheer diversity of them is outstanding and soon becomes some of the most impressive to ever come out of the series. If you're at all a fan of the franchise, Soul Calibur 3 is a good option when it comes to looking for a solid fighter on the PS2. Well, that does it for today's video. Don't forget to hit subscribe and follow me on all of the socials to stay up to date on future videos. You can also join our growing community on Discord and meet many like-minded gamers to continue the conversation with. I'd like to give a special shout out to our Patreon supporters Rhino, Skill Jim, Nano, Steve and Paddy J for their continued support that helps make these videos possible. If you're interested in joining our Discord or supporting the channel through Patreon, you'll find all of these links in the description. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch the video. I'll catch you next time.